When I was growing up in Aberdeenshire, where I'm from, I got to love books through reading stuff like Gatsby by Scott Fitzgerald, Kazuo Ishiguro, Seamus Heaney, listened to music by people like Taylor Swift, Bruce Springsteen, The Fray, watched Glee on TV, Friends. And what you might notice about all of this culture that I had access to is it's all made or set somewhere else, right? Aberdeen isn't a place to be imagined in art. You learn this when you're very young. In fact, you kind of learn it's barely a place to be imagined at all. I mean, I remember watching CBBC as a kid, and the presenters, they read out letters that have been sent in by kids from around the UK. And they've got one from Abby in Cheshire, one from Terry in Norwich, one from Phoebe in Wolverhampton, and then one from John in Scotland. And what you learn, as a kid is that, well, to these people from London, and Scotland is a distant, amorphous blob. It doesn't get to have counties and towns and cities. And it wasn't really until I got to university and I read The Quarry Wood by Nan Shepherd that I would learn that Aberdeen and the Shire are worth literature with a capital L, high art, if you like, because I do think that you internalize this idea that it's not a place that should be imagined in art. And I remember I was just so shocked reading the book thinking like, oh my gosh, somebody published this, somebody agreed to publish this, and it's like set in little villages that I know, that I've been in. It's in Aberdeen, and it's streets that I know. I know what that building looks like, And not just because I've seen it on TV countless times before and it's in the middle of London, And I thought to myself, what makes Gatsby any more of a classic than this? And of course, a major part of that is that, well, Gatsby's set in New York. It's from America, so it gets to be universal, whereas Quarry Wood's set in Aberdeenshire, so it gets to be local, regional literature. And yeah, it's got so much in it that makes it so affecting. At its centre, it's a vividly imagined woman who is, in 1928, living in a world made by and for men, and she makes a place for herself in that world. She insists on her presence there. She doesn't apologise for her being there. And 90 years after Quarry Wood, I find myself asking, as a young writer from Aberdeenshire, well, how do I, as a queer man, write into Aberdeenshire and the straight world that I know it to be? How do I, like Shepherd made a man's world a woman's world in the Quarry Wood, make a straight world a queer world in my writing today? And how do I not apologise for my being from Aberdeenshire? And I think that, well, Shepherd, she wrote in such a hopeful way. She looked out at the world in a way that was always enthralled, where she might have become bitter. And I think that this gives me a guiding star to follow. She made space and insisted on a female consciousness while looking back at the world with wonder and noting its beauty. And I wonder if I might make space for a queer consciousness in a similar kind of way. Because it's not really enough for me to turn away from Aberdeen, because that would be to participate in the rhetoric that maintains it as an unimagined place, a distant place, and an amorphous place. I have a responsibility, and I think that responsibility is political, to speak to Shepherd in my writing, and to speak to Grasset Gibbon in my writing. And I think it's political when writers choose not to do this as well. And it's political to insist that Aberdeenshire is beautiful because the people are beautiful. And we don't need Doric to make us quirky or farms to make us useful. And in fact, these things are both so often used to tokenise what it means to be from Aberdeenshire. And if you speak in a particular way or you do a particular thing, that makes you good at being from Aberdeenshire. Well, and if you're like me and you're no use on a farm and you don't speak like you're from Aberdeenshire necessarily, or the preconceived way of what that means, then you're bad at being from Aberdeenshire. And I want to say that we're beautiful apart from these things, as well as with them. I mean, I grew up thinking Aberdeenshire was a place that I would have to leave in my writing and in person, but I think Shepherd has shown me another path which I have the privilege of following.